Hello and welcome to TVP World. You're watching World News Tonight, coming to you live from Warsaw. My name is Anna Galczyńska. We have a brutal democracy, says the Belarusian dictator who organized a farce of democracy today. The regime called it an election, but the free world calls it fraud. More on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at the latest headlines. Slovakia's government is hanging on by a thread. Robert Fico's coalition partners have started a revolt. The Gulf of America, deportations and only 2 genders. We wrap up Trump's first days in the White House. And the Giving Spirit sweeps Poland as an annual charity event raises millions of dollars for life-saving medical equipment. A special election operation. That's what the leader of the democratic opposition, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, called Sunday's so-called presidential election in Belarus, which is widely expected to be rigged. Anastasia Yanchenko has this report on how Election Day unfolded in one of Europe's last dictatorships.
In democratic countries, elections are supposed to be a civic process in which citizens go to polling stations to cast their ballots for their preferred representatives. But that's not the case in Belarus.
Everybody knows the result. We all know how this works.
This election is expected to mark the start of Alexander Lukashenko's 7th term in office. Lukashenko is the first and so far only president of Republic of Belarus. He has held onto the office with an iron grip for 30 years. He remains a key ally and advocate of Russia's Vladimir Putin.
I know Putin. He is a very calm, prudent and careful person.
The highly contested presidential elections of 2020 marked a turning point, with the global democratic community no longer recognizing him as the president of Belarus.
This time, the civilized world is talking to us. To Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, to the United Transitional Cabinet and to the Coordination Council of Belarus.
In the previous election, in 2020, Lukashenko announced he had received 80% of votes, sparking mass protests in Belarus. The events marked the beginning of large-scale repressions, with direct backing from the Kremlin. According to the Belarusian human rights watchdog Vyasna, more than 3,000 people were sentenced for participating in protests against the reached election results in 2020. Crackdown decimated the democratic opposition, whose members are either in prison or have been forced into exile.
It was their democratic right to make that choice. Some chose prison, some chose exile, as you say. We did not expel anyone from the country, and moreover, we opened the country.
Lukashenko has recently begun what some have called a pardon campaign. Since last summer, he has released over 200 political prisoners.
It's not change of policy. It's like testing democracy. Look, I released 20 people. Is it enough for you? Are you ready, to lift sanctions? Are you ready, to recognize me? No? Okay, 20 more.
In retaliation for the support provided by Poland, Lithuania and other countries to the exiled opposition, Lukashenko sent thousands of migrants to destabilize neighboring states.
The scheme of directing migrants to the borders with the EU, which involved tourist companies, was overseen by people under Lukashenko's control. These companies received funds from Lukashenko to move the migrants to the borders.
According to experts, Lukashenko now seeks to maintain a neutral position vis-à-vis Russia while maintaining an isolationist stance towards Europe.
Lukashenko doesn't want to be in Russia or Europe. He wants to maintain the balance he has upheld for 30 years.
Hundreds of thousands of Belarusians abroad took to the streets in protest against the Sunday's elections. Despite the grim political situation in their home country, Belarusians believe one day they will return to a free and democratic Belarus.
In Slovakia, political turmoil over Prime Minister Robert Fico's challenges to the rule of law, overtly pro-Russian course, and unpopular domestic policy is weakening his grip on power. But as Michael van Bloemenstein found out, despite calls for Fico's resignation, it's unlikely the government will fall anytime soon.
The pressure is mounting for Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico. His open flirtations with the Kremlin and ideas of leaving the EU proved to be the spark for mass protests this weekend. From the start, Fico's rhetoric has echoed that of Viktor Orban in neighboring Hungary. Almost immediately after Fico took office in 2023, Bratislava cut off military aid to Ukraine. Fico is the most recent of only 3 EU leaders who have visited Moscow since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Earlier this month, Slovakia's parliament debated a motion of no confidence. The motion was retracted, with the opposition announcing they would modify and reissue it at a later date. Recent defections have left Fico's coalition short of a majority in parliament. First, 3 MPs from the far-right SNS left his coalition. This month, another 4 from the Social Democratic Hlas party defected to the opposition. So far, however, they've said they would not support a vote of no confidence if it came up. The likelihood that a vote to topple Fico would pass would be close to 0, says Grigory Mezeshnikov of the Institute of Public Affairs in Bratislava.
So opposition first has to increase its support. So far, rating of opposition parties are slightly rising, but it's not enough for creation of the majority government.
In response to the pressure, Robert Fico has doubled down on his rhetoric. Last week, he claimed the protests were being instigated by outside forces, without providing evidence.
Which is absolutely delusional. So Robert Fico, he feels that the situation for him and for ruling coalition is more and more complicated, that government is losing not only formally majority, but also the energy.
One of Fico's party's MPs even suggested leaving the European Union. It's an unpopular position in the country, but even just political consideration brings its own dangers, one political scientist warns.
Because we also have arguably more radical, more extreme partisan actors in the partisan scene of Slovakia than Fico's smer, who are now not in the parliament, but they can make it to the parliament in future elections.
While it is too early to tell whether Fico stands to lose power over the turmoil, the best thing the opposition can hope for the short term seems to be a minority government with coalitions of convenience. And Fico has successfully dealt with such coalitions in the past.
Viktor Orban is playing on Putin's team, not on ours, says Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, after Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban threatened to veto EU sanctions on Russia. This follows a massive row between Budapest and Kiev after Ukraine halted the transit of Russian energy products through its territory. Franciszek Pidis has more.
During his EU Council presidency address at the European Parliament in Strasbourg, Donald Tusk was clear.
The war in Ukraine will end. The Russian aggression against Ukraine will end. We will return to business as we used to and make Europe dependent on Russian supplies again. This sort of thinking must end once and for all, because that, among other things, is what led to this war in the first place.
Some in Europe, however, seem less enthusiastic than the Polish Prime Minister about moving away from Russian resources.
Now that the issue of the rollover of the Russian sanctions is on the agenda, I have slammed on the brakes and asked EU leaders to understand that this situation cannot continue. They cannot make Hungary pay the price for these sanctions to such a degree.
Orban took this harsh stance after Kyiv decided not to renew its gas transit agreement with Moscow, which saw the transportation of Russian gas through Ukrainian territory to Europe. In response to Orban's threat of vetoing EU sanctions against Russia, Donald Tusk called his Hungarian counterpart a bona fide Russian ally.
If Viktor Orban really blocks European sanctions at a key moment for the war, it will be absolutely clear that in this big game for the security and future of Europe, he is playing on Putin's team, not in hours, with all the consequences of this fact.
Hungary's foreign minister, Peter Szijjártó, replied to Tusk's comment online, saying, quote, "We play for Hungary's team and represent Hungarian interests." The Hungarian Prime Minister, hand in hand with his Slovakian counterpart Robert Fico, says the lack of Russian gas in Europe will have tremendous consequences for the economy, while the rest of the EU argues both countries can easily find replacement suppliers.
We will continue with these packages, and I think that Viktor Orban is now trying to push Brussels to have it more money from European budget, because he has it still a package. What is it frozen by European Commission?
Politico, citing anonymous EU envoys as sources, said an EU meeting on January 27th is likely to see a resolution to this inner European conflict, with most of them betting Hungary will in fact renew the sanctions, a stance mirrored by some members of the European Parliament.
I am 100% sure that really we will prolong the sanction and Hungary will involve in this process. Also, this is what I can say in this moment. It's still ongoing on Sunday, today, the negotiation, but I think that the result will be positive.
However, if no compromise is reached, the EU will only have until the end of January to prolong the sanctions, for which unanimous support is needed.
It's been almost a week since Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. A slew of executive orders vastly changing the direction of the country were signed by President Donald Trump, from declaring a national emergency on the southern border to declassifying government documents on the JFK assassination. The first week was anything but boring. Don Artlerth digs deeper into Trump's first week back in office.
The world can change in the blink of an eye. That's what happened this week when Donald Trump made a miraculous return to the White House.
That I will faithfully execute.
For Americans, this marks an uncharted change in trajectory of both domestic policy and national priorities.
During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first. I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted. I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life.
Before he even got to the White House, the new president made his first move.
First item that President Trump is signing is the rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
And by the time he entered the Oval Office, the 47th president's desk was already piled high with executive orders. Donald Trump wasted no time implementing his America First agenda with the stroke of a Sharpie. He issued 26 executive orders. That's more than any other president on their first day in office. In his domestic policy, for example, President Donald Trump declared a national emergency at the southern border, sending 1,500 troops to stop illegal migration, ordered the end to birthright citizenship, expanded the death penalty for certain federal crimes, and established federal policies recognizing only 2 biological sexes, rescinding protections for transgender individuals. Trump also acted swiftly with sweeping changes to America's global commitments. Immediately, Trump abandoned the Paris Agreement and other international climate commitments, withdrew from the World Health Organization, and ordered a comprehensive review and freeze of all U.S. foreign aid. But despite all this, not everything is going smoothly for the new administration. Only 4 key positions in Trump's new cabinet have been approved by Congress. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was the first Trump official to get the green light.
The duties of the office of which I'm about to enter. So help you God. So help me God. Congratulations, Mr. Secretary.
As President Trump pointed out last night, and I believe deeply, we are headed into a new era that I think will make the world a safer place. We have a president who yesterday, President Trump made clear in his inaugural speech that one of the primary goals of American foreign policies is the promotion of peace.
After taking the reins at the State Department, the chief diplomat reached out to over a dozen of his key counterparts around the world. Remarkably, Poland was the only European country he contacted. Speaking with Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski, the two discussed energy and defense cooperation. Ending the war in Ukraine will be one of the most difficult challenges the new administration faces in Europe and the international arena. Although it's been a very busy week for the new president, with executive orders and traveling to disaster areas in California and North Carolina, Trump also delivered on another election promise. Americans can now rest easy because the Gulf of Mexico has been renamed and is now the Gulf of America.
Tomorrow marks the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the German Nazi concentration and extermination camp Auschwitz-Birkenau. An event commemorating one of the darkest chapters in human history will bring together around 50 Holocaust survivors at the site of the former camp, along with official delegations from around the world. Sonia Agata Bishan is at the Auschwitz Museum and has this report.
Monday marks the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. This is why we're expecting here over 40 state delegations, various state dignitaries, including President of France, Emmanuel Macron, Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, as well as President of Poland, Andrzej Duda, who will be representing the host country. Aside from that, we are also expecting monarchs of Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, Spain, and the United Kingdom. Notably, King Charles III is supposed to attend the ceremony. Aside from that, we are also expecting the attendance of various high-level representatives of international organizations, notably Roberta Metsola, the President of the European Parliament, as well as Antonio Costa, President of the European Council. They're all coming here with the same intent, which is to pay a tribute to the victims as well as survivors of Auschwitz. And it is precisely survivors that will be taking center stage in the Monday program. The official start of the main part of the program is at 4 p.m. CET. But even before that, viewers all around the world will be able to get a sense of the atmosphere through a special initiative of the Polish television. It is happening only this year. Polish television decided to have an international studio for a number of reasons. Firstly, it is to pay a tribute to the survivors. It is out of respect for them, for those who are still with us at the 80th anniversary. But aside from that, it is also due to the fact that so close to Poland, in Ukraine, there is a war brewing, and Polish television felt a responsibility to remind everyone of the atrocities of Auschwitz and of the fact that no war can bring anything good. So even if you're not here, you'll be able to get a sense of the atmosphere, and even before 4 p.m., because as of 12 p.m. noon, there will be interviews going on with survivors as well as various personas from the world of politics, of media, culture, and so on. As of 2005, we are commemorating 27th of January as the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. From Auschwitz, for TVP World, Sonia Gatobiszczyn.
Poland's Great Orchestra of Christmas Charity is holding its 33rd annual fundraiser on Sunday, with proceeds going to support pediatric oncology and hematology care. A lot has changed since its first edition in 1992, but as Alex Sumliński reports, the charity continues to attract more and more people with strong sense of community.
Poland in the early 90s was a great place. The country had just recently cast off the shackles of communism. Hospitals lacked basic medical equipment. And it was in 1993 that Jerzy Owsiak, the bubbly personality in his red eyeglass frames and yellow shirt, came along and organized the first fundraiser with the aim of improving the quality of medical care for children. That first collection drive raised more than $3 million, worth nearly $7 million in today's money, which was spent on medical equipment for the Children's Health Center in Warsaw.
How long will you be doing this?
Till the end of time, and then some, right?
Fast forward to 2025, and the Great Orchestra of Christmas Charity continues to help hospitals purchase life-saving equipment. It takes place each winter and has become a mainstay of Poland's cultural scene. Concerts, fairs, and festivals are organized in many parts of the country, featuring Polish pop stars as well as foreign artists, many of whom perform for free. Each year, thousands of volunteers sign up, to fundraise on city streets, and having done so once, they continue to come back each year.
I've been raising money since 2020, and it's always been a very important form of help for me, and I like to help out in this indirect way. What I enjoy about it is that my friends and I can do it together.
Owsiak's foundation has contributed millions of dollars to Poland's healthcare institutions over the past 3 decades, and the initiative continues to break records. The final tally in 2024 was over $70 million. In 2023, volunteers collected more than $38 million. Over the past 30 years, the Great Orchestra of Christmas Charity has purchased over 75,000 medical devices for use in hospitals all over Poland.
Just look at all the heart stickers here.
One of the most expensive devices, which cost more than $4 million, was donated to the Children's Health Center in Warsaw, but it's used to diagnose patients from all over the country. Owsiak has recently been the target of hate speech and has had criminal threats made against him online. One 71-year-old suspect said his actions were motivated by watching a report on the right-wing channel TV Republika. That TV station has been running a campaign titled "I don't support Owsiak, I support Republika," using hearts, the symbol of the charity. But others have also attacked Owsiak.
The persecutor has charged the suspect with making criminal death threats against the president of the Great Orchestra of Christmas Charity.
But the orchestra continues its work, and in doing so, continues to bring together those who want to help others.
There have been all kinds of smear campaigns, but whenever I've been in the hospital, I've been treated with equipment donated by the Great Orchestra of Christmas Charity. They've helped me in the past, and that's why I continue to volunteer.
The Great Orchestra of Christmas Charity marches on and continues to help those who need it the most.
And now we turn to our daily political analysis. Elon Musk appeared remotely on Saturday at a rally of the German right-wing populist Alternative for Germany, AfD. The American billionaire once again supported the party ahead of the upcoming elections. At the same time, he spoke about German history. I think that in Germany, too much attention is being paid to the sins of the past. Children are not guilty of the sins of their parents, he said.
Children should not be guilty of the sins of their parents, or even let alone their parents, their great-grandparents, maybe. And we should be optimistic and excited about a future for Germany. That's really my message: just be optimistic, excited, and preserve German culture, protect the German people, and there's some other things that I think would be very helpful. And the best way to ensure the future is good, you have to fight for a good future every day, and it will be great. And we'll have a very exciting, wonderful future.
Contrary to Elon Musk's advice, the remembrance and acknowledgement of the dark past of the country and its people should be central in shaping the German society.
The words we heard from the main actors of the AfD rally about Great Germany and the need to forget German guilt for Nazi crimes sounded all too familiar and ominous, especially only hours before the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz.
And I'm now joined by Andrzej Byrt, former Polish ambassador to Germany. Good evening, Mr. Ambassador.
Good evening.
So you've been ambassador to Paris, to Berlin. You've gained extensive experience on Polish-German relations, as well as on the German sentiment on history, the sentiment of guilt included. So my question to you is, what is your assessment of what Elon Musk is saying publicly? Is it, according to you, a premeditated provocation or simply historic ignorance? Or maybe there's another agenda?
Well, I would say it's a combination of both. He's not a stupid guy. He knows the world and history of Europe as well. And I think he decided to meddle, as a matter of fact, with the internal affairs of Germany. One could then ask himself, why?
Why?
And the answer, I think, can be combined with at least two elements. He probably thinks that he's over very many circumstances which he tried during his personal life to influence in such a way which could bring him a success. And he did it. success in industrial sense. And then he observes Germany, who used to be big, very often called in such a way, big locomotive of entire Europe from the point of view of industrial development. And all of a sudden, now Germany is facing a dramatic collapse of very many industries, have certain difficulties. They will be overcome. I'm absolutely sure about this. But in this particular moment, in the pre-election time, he can stick a kind of a needle in the back of Germans saying, guys, you should be less maybe official, less or more flexible, whereas you too stiff. But instead of saying that with plain words, he used comparisons which have very bad and negative meaning, at least in the hearts and minds of great majority of Europeans, but also in Germany, because we have to remember that thanks to Americans, after Second World War, the new generation of German citizens have changed their minds what concerns the consequences of this dramatic 20th century where Germany played this dramatic and negative role. So they've learned their lessons. Oh, thanks to Americans. And all of a sudden, a young generation of not American, because he's a South African, but being, of course, citizen of the United States, he now tried to teach lessons to Europeans.
So it remains to be seen how much of it will fall on a fertile ground in Germany, right?
Probably part of it will, unfortunately, fall on a fertile ground, as you said.
So let me quote Elon Musk: "It's time to move on from the past. Children should not be guilty of sins of their parents. It's okay to be proud to be German." He went on recalling German tribes in Gallic campaigns, powerful warriors. Yes. So these remarks are closely correlated with the Auschwitz liberation anniversary.
Yes.
And is this kind of behavior intentional? Or is it simply lack of historical sensitivity?
Well, I won't be the one who could guess 100% sure whether it was or was not a premeditated gesture. Unfortunately, it is a very malicious, and it was, and rightly so, acknowledged as a very negative step by him, who found rather a very awkward moment to say such, I would call it nonsense.
So in the light of the latest announcement by Friedrich Merz of signing the new Polish-German partnership agreement, could this sort of revival of national, we should say, nationalism in Germany, could it somehow have an impact on our bilateral relations?
Well, I don't think not immediately, but it will be taken into account by not only Poles, but probably also other European politicians, including, for instance, French, which are steady and very strong partners of Germans in the development of the European Union. But such wording, which Musk did use, is very awkward and should not happen exactly also because of this coincidence with the this ceremony of liberation of the Auschwitz camp. So I would say he didn't play his role properly, and he intervened in a very, very negative way.
At Trump's inauguration, Musk made a stiff-armed salute that critics also were quick to liken to the Nazi Sieg Heil. Yes. He then, of course, brushed away those comments and those comparisons. But why even doing this to risk such comparisons?
Of course, having made this gesture, he just opened the door. And then, as a matter of fact, some have been criticizing, some others. And also, I was very surprised that...
but was it coincidence, you think?
With the 1 and 2, no. He decided, as I said, to meddle with the affairs which are not his. And particularly in this very sensitive time, which is a pre-election, last 4 weeks before the elections will take place in Germany. So in such a period of time, every lapse of in awkward word, such a generalization or comments of that type will ignite overreactions of various partners. So I think he gave us a signal that he's probably not politically mature.
And just to wrap up, as we must finish, why hasn't the president spoken out against Musk's remarks?
President
Donald Trump.
He didn't react. Well, probably because I would say in his soul, both guys are rather similar. It reminds me of a famous English strategic philosopher from 16th, 17th century, Thomas Hobbes, who said why people are fighting with one another. They said there are three elements. One is competition, one is distrust, and number three is a developed ego which looks for glory. It seems that both gentlemen have the same spirit of action which is theirs, and then we are falling victims to their sayings.
Andrzej Byrt, thank you very much for coming, sir. Thank you for your expertise and sharing your insight with us tonight. And thank you very much for watching World News Tonight. And good evening, good night, and see you soon.